We have a brand new update regarding Jordan Addison and what currently stands for the beginning of his season with a possible suspension, and also brand new updates with this wide receiver room. We're going to be breaking that down and where this team currently stands on that front, as well as a brand new trade update with the Minnesota Vikings involving TJ Watt. We need to discuss all of this here on this video. Before we do jump into it though, ladies and gentlemen, we're on the road to 2K and we're just about halfway there. Your sport's been absolutely phenomenal as of late, and we appreciate all of you guys watching these videos right now, but we need to jump straight into it here. First off, starting with a quote from Felton on ESPN reported on Twitter that July 15th, before updating his online record, shows that Jordan Addison now has a hearing scheduled for this Thursday. And of course, this is tomorrow at the time of recording this video, I believe. And coming into this, we didn't really know what the situation was, if there was a possible suspension coming for Jordan Addison, and the Vikings currently are waiting to figure out what this deal is. Of course, we now know that there are moves coming with the wide receiver room, whether that is moving some people up in the depth chart, whether that is at the mid-season point, the end-season point, after the season. A wide receiver in Jalen Nailor will likely be moved. So, looking at this and coming into this, there is a major opportunity for him and Felton, both on this team, to take a major jump here with this roster if we do see a suspension to Jordan Addison. And I do want to pull up another quote here coming out about this whole situation from Jordan Addison. So, I'm not sure what's going on discipline-wise, but I own up whatever it is. Any disciplinary actions that come my way, I'm going to stand tall, face it, and get through it and shake back. So it almost does seem as well, kind of adding to this, that Jordan Addison is expecting a suspension, be either from the NFL or from the Minnesota Vikings in either of those two scenarios. And given what we've been able to see from Jordan Addison in the past season, he's been a very good wide receiver 2. From Jalen Nailor as a wide receiver 3, he's been a very, very good wide receiver 3. And now Felton being drafted into this, Rondale Moore signing with the Minnesota Vikings, there are lots of opportunities here for the Minnesota Vikings at the beginning of this season. Now, looking at as well what we have here, kind of comparing to what we saw with Wes Phillips, the Vikings could face additional scrutiny with how they handled the Addison situation due to how they handled other issues. They did suspend offensive coordinator Wes Phillips for 3 weeks without pay for his DWI arrest in December 2023. So more signs point to if the NFL don't do anything, the Vikings likely will on Jordan Addison's front. I don't want to get too much into this, more so than looking at what this means for the wide receiver room, but it does seem like a suspension is in some way coming for Jordan Addison with this team. Now, looking at where we currently stand, of course, in the wide receiver room, Jalen Nailor having this and being reports of a trade coming at some point with his contract likely being too expensive for what the Vikings want to pay for a wide receiver 3, potential 4 after this season. And looking at this as well, it's a very good opportunity for him in the first 3 weeks as a potential wide receiver 2 to jump in here, up his trade value, up his contract value, and see where the Vikings could go from here. Now, the Vikings are going to have to keep a close eye on Jalen Nailor. As I mentioned in a previous video a couple weeks ago, I spoke about his trade opportunities with the league kind of being on watch with him and how much he's going to be earning compared to what the Vikings are wanting to pay. There's a lot of things the Vikings are going to have to go about and try and work around when it comes down to it due to how much Jalen Nailor is going to be getting paid. And as you mentioned, on May 2nd, the Pro Football Network listed trade candidates of all 32 teams and named Jalen Nailor as an expendable asset that the Vikings could trade, and also went on to say it could be during the season, could be after the season. Not really likely before, because we know that the possibility of him having a wide receiver 2 option here is going to be very big, and having Felton there as well, it gives him the opportunity to try and work to get into a better role and a higher trade value, higher salary, of course, in a contract year. So I want to kind of pull that up and go over that wide receiver room, because it's going to be a very interesting look for the beginning of the season. Now, the way that we know or almost feel like we're going to see a suspension coming to Jordan Addison. So I want to know what you guys think about this. What do you think about Jalen Nailor on this front? Do you think that we should keep him as a wide receiver 3 for the time being and keep Felton as a 4? Obviously, it's a long season. We're going to have some movement in the season and see what happens, but it's very interesting to see where things are going to go from here, especially knowing that we're going to have probably a different looking wide receiver 2 and 3 at the beginning of this upcoming season. Now, we did want to pull up another article before we do move on to TJ Watt here from Athlon Sports, going on about Jalen Nailor. Last season, Nailor stepped in for an injured Addison in week 2 and 3, played 85% of the snaps in those 2 games, catching 6 passes for 85 yards, 2 touchdowns. Those games were an early glimmer of a breakout season for Nailor, who finished the season with 414 yards receiving and 6 touchdowns after struggling with injuries early in his career. And Jalen Nailor was a very important part of this team, especially even weeks 2 and 3 going after that, and then even in the later part of the season where we saw a lot of teams start to adjust to the hyper-focused on Jefferson, Hawkinson, and Addison type of offense, and left Jalen Nailor wide open. We saw how good he was when in coverage while being open whenever you needed him. He was always the guy that was able to get, whether it is a first down, a 10-yard gain, 15-yard gain, or go for that long bomb down the field. He is a very able player that can adjust to wherever he needs to in the Vikings lineup, and having his importance to this team is very interesting to see where it goes from here. So let me know what you think about him and Felton in the comments below, and a way that this team is going to kind of be structured in the first 2 weeks, 3 weeks, with a possible Jordan Addison suspension. But we do need to move on to a very interesting and exciting kind of update here from a trade from Heavy Sports. And I want to pull up this here coming into it. Watt appears to be unhappy with the fact that, look, you're bringing in all these other guys. Fowler said on ESPN, this comes from Jeremy Fowler, before we do jump into this heavy article. Fowler said on ESPN, get up back at the beginning of July. You're bringing in these veterans, and you're paying DK Metcalf and Jalen Ramsey a big salary. That could be money that's allocated to me, and that comes to TJ Watt looking for this new contract. And of course, a lot of teams not too worried about having a guy like TJ Watt on their team. Everybody, I think, would love it. And the fact the Vikings are linked is another major update for us here on this trade market, as we know this team is getting better. And when we do go to this heavy.com article, the Vikings could look to bring in a top 5 edge rusher. And they say, yet, neither Grenard nor Van Ginkel are considered a top echelon of their edge rushers, than the likes of Myles Garrett and Nick Bosa. So, this trade proposal. Minnesota makes a play to add one of the best defensive players in the NFL in Pittsburgh Steelers, TJ Watt. Now, coming in is, of course, adding TJ Watt to this lineup would already be incredible. When we do look at what a trade would look like, you would have to give up Jonathan Grenard, which I don't think the Vikings would want to do. He is, of course, older. He's still a very, very good player. TJ Watt, though, is a different specimen, especially with what he's been doing over the past few seasons. And adding a 2026 third-round pick into this deal, of course, it would look good, obviously, on paper. Now, you would have to work around the funds. It's not an easy deal to make, especially with how much each player is making in this deal. However, the Vikings, in my mind, are a team that's not willing to kind of let anything like this pass. They're at least going to consider it, of course, if this deal is proposed, or if they propose this deal, they would certainly be in on it. Now, would the Vikings make it happen? I think there's a very good chance they try and go out here and make sure it does work, go out and try and do it. But as we look towards the future, this team looks to be pretty locked up on defense and pretty set. And I want to pull up another bit of this article here. It says, however, the situation looks a lot less grave with the fact that Jonathan Grenard would be moving the other way, and the Steelers would thus cover his financial burden in 2026 and beyond. Moreover, the team has numerous other players, such as defensive tackle Harrison Phillips, who could easily be low-cost cap casualties at the end of the 2025 season. Now, this is one thing as well. If TJ Watt is costing too much money and causing too much of a defensive mix-up on this Vikings team, I really don't think they do anything extra. I think they keep it what it is. It's working, and we currently do stand as the 32nd team with cap availability, and going into 2026. So the Vikings already have their cost, struggles built out for them, and I don't think they want to add to that. So as much as TJ Watt would be a great addition and a phenomenal kind of look to this team, I think it's a very, very tough option to actually make that happen and go out here and do it. So let me know what you think about all of this here in the comments below. But that's all I have in this video. If you did enjoy it, give it a like, hit the sub button as well. I'm signing out, though. Thank you for watching. Hope you have a great day. See you later.